It is 7:00. We can open the planning board meeting, October 8th, 2024. Meeting called to order.
No. Bill, though, I don't know where he is.
We can join in. So the previous meetings minutes were distributed. Do you have any problems, Kathy, on those?
I reached out to Ken earlier today. There were some small typos and punctuation issues, but all the substantive stuff was there. So, Ken, if you want me to, I can clean up the punctuation and then we can approve them as amended.
You can send them along if you like.
We don't have, we can actually approve them next meeting if that's better.
Okay.
Rather than approve them subject to punctuation changes, rather.
It isn't important. If you're comfortable just doing it, I'm comfortable doing it.
But if there's no motion to approve, we can.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second discussing the minutes of the last meeting, whether or not there's some punctuation changes, we should approve it as is. And then next meeting, we can make changes subject to the. All right, discussion. All in favor, Kath?
Aye.
Aye. It's 4-0 to approve the previous meeting's minutes and distributed. Treasurer's report. Didn't we have something else in the financial end of it in the book? We had like a bond return. Somebody requested a bond.
Oh, yeah, that's on later. That's,
Would it make sense to bring that up into the financial end of it, which is you? And we'll talk about the vote on the bond reduction at this point.
So tonight you don't need to take a vote on the bonds only because I just got information back from the peer review on the, and so you have it in your packet tonight.
On the amount?
I think the very last thing in your packet.
It did.
And sorry, Kathy, I don't think because this came in today, I don't think I got it up on the website yet.
Okay. Any negative summary has to be addressed by the applicant before we go, correct?
Well, so I would just hold off, I would hold off on issuing any bond reimbursement right now, just because as was outlined in Stan Tech's review of Dean Pond subdivision, it looks like there's some issues regarding slopes.
Yeah.
So as you can see in some of the pictures, the cross slope at some driveways, detectable warning panel at ramp 1 seems to be insufficient. Some more cross slopes at some more driveways. Actually, looks like at most of the driveways that cross slope seems to be an issue.
Now, we say 4-1 on our side slopes, right?
I'd
Is that
defer to
what's
your
working? And
knowledge on that.
we ask for 4-1 because sometimes we're only going to get 3-1, which is acceptable. But if we ask for 3, we're going to get 2. So we've always asked for 4-1 sides. Just a lot easier to make because you got these the plow. You see the guys mowing the sides of the thing. They won't decide the roads with that. We're doing it in Powell Street today. It's just so much easier for them. They have gentle slopes. Do you have anything from a treasurer's report?
No.
Treasurer's secretary? All right, why don't we go to plans report? You have distributed summary if you'd like.
Do you want me to go through it or?
You've sure anything that you want to add to, edit, any concerns you have with any of those?
I don't know.
Any questions for Mike from the board?
Nope. I really
All right.
do appreciate getting these in advance, though. It's nice.
All right, so let's go to approval not required. Is that the one in front of us?
There are none this meeting, so that's just a stand-in.
Okay, I got you. Place. Definitive applicant estimate to proposing a conventional subdivision. Is it right here?
That is it. So this is the,
There's only 3 lots, is that right?
correct.
420-foot dead end road. 0, where's 0 Milford?
This is the Governor's Landing site, so it looks like we got Sean Malone on.
Oh, this is the backup that they wanted, just in case.
Yes.
They wanted to have something on file, just in case a year from now, this would be the one of record if there are other projects that failed.
Yeah.
They would have this on file.
Mhm.
There you go. Okay, so we would probably send it over review then.
I've contacted Stantec to provide a quote for services for review. I'm just waiting to hear back on that quote, but I've already reached out to them. Obviously, the application's been received. The Form C and D, I believe, are the ones that are required for the definitive. The application, those two forms, the application fee, as well as the peer review fees have all been received.
And we did talk with that applicant as to what we would do. We would respond, would please put something in writing saying that we've received your preliminary when you go to the definitive.
So that was provided at the end of the preliminary
So
phase, yes.
he pretty much knows what the process with us is going to be for the preliminary.
Yeah. So tonight, if the board deems the application to be submitted and complete, at the board's pleasure, schedule a public hearing.
On a preliminary, we would schedule. a
And
public-
this is definitive.
Okay, let's schedule a public hearing. Yes, and send it up, right?
Yeah, I do have some questions, Tom.
Yeah, go ahead.
Question one, which is really basic, is I don't understand this, because we already have, something planned for that site. So why are we doing it seems like almost an overlay on something we've already approved. I mean, not an overlay, but it seems like we're looking now at doing a 3-lot conventional subdivision. And I don't quite understand why we're doing that when we already have something there.
An applicant can actually come in with 5 different plans or multiple plans, and each one of them could be built, and planning boards would put, if you choose this one, the other 4 are null and void. Let's say, so a developer can bring in multiple plans, types of development for a property.
Okay,
They can legally do that. They can't do both. So what we would do in a definitive decision, we would either say approved or denied. Either way, it's the same conditions. Whether you approve it or deny it, you list the same conditions. And we would say, if this is done with the 100 senior units would not be built. That plan would be null and void. And this would take effect. But he can have 2 outstanding. It's just that when he starts to build it, he has to pick one or the other.
okay, John, you have your hand up and then I have other questions, so.
Yeah, and if
But hold on,
I
I guess,
may-
Sean, do you have a question?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I was just offering to kind of respond to the member's question a little bit more specifically as to the applicant's intent. And it's simply to freeze the zoning. That's the only intent that the applicant has here. And with Massachusetts state law, if you have a piece of property, you want to lock in your rights at a given time under zoning, the way to do it, it's prescribed to be a definitive subdivision plan. That's what we filed here. And again, it is what we've talked about, kind of, I think I mentioned with the preliminary, there is absolutely no intention to change what the Governor's Landing project is right now that you have all seen, and we've been permitting. We actually just filed the EIR with MIPA. So that process is still ongoing and coming to an end, and hopefully the start of construction. This is merely something that the applicant wants to protect themselves and their future right should something change. There's been a lot of kind of fluidity with some zoning changes and things like that. So they just want to kind of have a freeze as to what they have moving forward. But again, there's no intent to change the Governor's Landing project as you've seen it over the last year, 2 years.
Okay, so
Yes, thank you. I know you explained that earlier. My point was that we have to treat it as just a standard application.
Right,
We can't, say-
Yep.
we can't say that this is only a freeze and bypass any of our processes.
right.
Absolutely. Meet all the regs. Absolutely.
Right. No, that I understand. But there's absolutely no intention of putting a 3 lot of now or ever putting only 3 houses on that, 3 units on that property. This is a,
Correct.
so if you have the zoning frozen and you decide that you don't want it, theoretically, you decide 3 isn't enough to make it worth anyone's while, and you've decided not to do the other, the senior housing or anything else, you can come back and do a 30 or 40 unit one, and the zoning will still be frozen. It
In
will be
theory,
frozen
yes.
for whatever use you want to put in it.
In theory, yes.
Okay, okay. The other thing is I did read the thing Michael put together regarding, the completeness of the plan, and there were a couple things that were still outstanding. And I didn't know what other members of the board thought about those. I don't have it in front of me. I think of them was one of them was the open space wasn't met. I think there were a couple issues flagged. And I don't know, do you guys have it in front of you, Tom?
Sean, I provided you a copy of that, correct? My review?
You did. And in all honesty, I haven't had a chance to go through it, but I do have a copy.
That's fine. Just wanted to make sure you had it.
Yes.
Is this something that will come up in the definitive public hearing? Yeah,
Is it something what?
that will come out in the definitive public hearing?
That came up or would come up?
That will. Are these are questions Sean will have to answer at the public
Okay.
hearing.
Okay, so this is just administrative where we say, cool, just take it to the next step. We're not,
Yes,
necessarily-
this is move forward with a public hearing or not.
okay, and then after the public hearing, this is terrible. I've been on the planning board for 5 years and I'm still like saying, okay, what do I do now? So basically, and after the public hearing, then the planning board can raise these issues. I mean, I'm sure the way you guys have been working this before, that they'll be addressed. But by that time, we'll have a chance to really weigh those, correct, and vote
Right,
for.
and-
Okay.
Right, and from a planning board perspective, if he gets approval of this, he's got the approval to build 3 houses.
Okay,
If he does, he does, he doesn't, he doesn't. But he'll have the for that plan. I
okay,
mean, it can change, it always does, but
okay.
we would only be voting and having this 3 lots looked at as meeting our spec.
Okay. And as far as the zoning you want to lock in, is it the zoning for, the front part, again, there was a waiver, or there was a zoning change allowing you to put residential in a business district. But this would also be a way to sort of lock yourself into Upton zoning pre-inclusionary zoning, correct?
Locks in all zoning, as far as I know, it locks in zoning from A to Z
Okay.
with the plan.
Starting
Right.
from when?
It would be what the zoning regulations on file were at the time that we filed the preliminary subdivision. So that was in May, I believe, Michael, is that right?
Yeah, you submitted the preliminary in April.
April, yeah.
Okay, so that was before town meeting when we passed inclusionary zoning.
Yes.
Okay, okay. All righty.
So we have a reviewing engineer, peer review.
Yeah, I'm getting, I've lined up Stantec, so I'll be getting a quote for them and confirming with the applicant.
All right, should we schedule a public hearing now or wait until next meeting?
I don't think there's any reason to wait until next meeting, unless we can't arrive at something tonight. The next available meeting, your next meeting is the 22nd, but I don't have a time to advertise for that because I would have had to have advertised today.
So the second Tuesday in November.
So second Tuesday in November or ooh,
Yeah, they were getting
When-
into the holiday schedule.
when's town meeting? 12th.
Well, no, what is it?
And when's Thanksgiving?
I think it's the 12th of November.
29th or the 28th? Oh, yeah. So that it might have to be, yeah, town meeting's on a Tuesday typically. So it's gonna have to be the 26th of November.
Okay,
So, Sean, is that, I mean, I think we're still within the 90 days for that, if it has to be the, that date, but is that okay with you?
Yeah, and why couldn't we do the 22nd? You don't have time to notice?
Yeah, I would have had to have gone out, in the newspaper today for 2 weeks in advance.
it's at least 7 and at least 14 days prior to, we have to notify.
Hmm. And the 12th is the town meeting, you said?
I think it's
Yep.
the 12th, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, we get acceptance of the application tonight and then the public hearing is scheduled for the 26th. Is that what we're doing here?
Yes.
Okay.
And we
Good
realize 26th is right before Thanksgiving, correct?
Yes.
2 days before Thanksgiving, okay. Okay,
So that doesn't,
Dress in
through
your
the
favorite
chair,
program.
through the chair, that doesn't create any issue for your client. I mean, I know this is, you know, as we've discussed, this is kind of a placeholder application. There's no real hurry behind it, correct?
No, I mean, the only thing is, again, as long as we have the acceptance of the application, that's what we need to then, move forward, then we can go through the process, yeah.
Okay. So,
That's
yeah.
fine with me, so set that up, then put that in the minutes, that'll be great.
Yeah.
All right, next.
All right, so the board, Sean, the board is accepted and scheduled the public hearing for the 26th of November.
Is there
At,
a time
7:10.
associated with that yet, or
7:10.
7:10? All right. Thank you very much, all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We have a public hearing. Amendment to zoning bylaws, article. Is it an actual planning board public hearing?
Yes, that was a public hearing for the amendment to the zoning bylaw, article for proposed amendment to the zoning bylaws, section
ADU.
300-7.6. Proposed accessory dwelling units, but it is currently noted in your bylaw as accessory apartments, 7.6 accessory apartments.
All right, so let's suspend the regularly scheduled meeting at 7:18. Public hearing for the amendments of the zoning bylaws. Section 5, Mass General Laws 48, section 307.6 accessory dwelling units. Go ahead, Mike, why don't you?
Sure, so, as we are familiar with, and there's no, public presence, but if anybody wants to tune in on this later and be informed as to what this is, the, state passed the Affordable Homes Act back in August. And as a part of that, package of legislation, the state amended MGL 40A, section 3. I think, I'm not looking at it right now. But I'll just say 40A. Yeah, no, section 5 is to amend what we're doing tonight, is the process of amendment. But yeah, MGL, anyway, so the state made accessory dwelling units as defined by the state in MGL by right across all of the state. So as of February of 2025, according to the legislature, is when this is set to take effect. At that time, all cities and towns must provide for accessory dwelling units as defined as is provided in this draft. A self-contained housing unit inclusive of sleeping, cooking, and sanitary facilities on the same lot as a principal dwelling, subject to otherwise applicable dimensional and parking requirements. That, 1, maintains a separate entrance either directly from the outside or through an entry hall or corridor shared with the principal dwelling, sufficient to meet the requirements of the state building code for safe egress. It is not larger in gross floor area than 1/2 the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller.
That's the key.
And, yeah, and 3, is subject to such additional restrictions as may be imposed by the municipality, including 2, but not limited to additional size restrictions and restrictions or prohibitions on short-term rental as defined in section 1 of chapter 64G. So as you go through this proposed bylaw amendment that we've discussed prior, well, what the intent of the planning board was with this document is to change your what is existing accessory apartment bylaw and have it mimic the newly proposed state law for accessory dwelling units, so that come February, you don't have a local bylaw that is in conflict with local state law. And further, this board didn't want to make any more policy changes within this draft at this time, with the understanding that the state should be providing additional guidelines, rules and regulations by February 25 to help towns understand how the state thinks this should be implemented.
And if I ask this one, certain things like size of the building, ours is not 900, setbacks, ours are not what they are, frontage is not what they are. So we will have to tweak those, I think would be our next step, to match our zoning. And hopefully that the state accepts those minor zoning changes that to match the town. That was ours is 1,000 square feet minimum.
Yes, yeah, so that's, we're now going with the 900 because the state,
So, but changing it from 900 to 1,000 at town meeting next year. As opposed to
Oh, yeah.
trying to put all these things and all these changes in this one.
well, that's a policy decision for this board to consider.
It's a good, wise to put it in, how many places do we have that don't have 100 foot of frontage already? You have, if you've got an existing dwelling, this has to go with an existing dwelling.
Mhm.
The lowest frontage we have is 100 feet in this
Yeah.
town, so there's probably no lots available with an existing dwelling that have the, whatever the frontage is, 75 feet or whatever theirs is.
Okay,
So there's probably no dwelling currently that's gonna be renovated or added, or has one that has 75 feet of front.
so the state is not requiring frontage associated with this.
Really?
Yeah, it is what is required is that an accessory dwelling unit is, I'll use the word attached, and I don't necessarily mean physically attached. An accessory dwelling unit is attached to an existing single-family home residential use.
By that, you mean it's electricity, it's septic,
So there just has to be a home already there.
all right,
That's all.
and that has the utilities, because there's a home there, it has utilities. So,
Yeah.
So all of these need utilities, so if you have a house with that, we're assuming that you can hook up. Even if you're not attached to the house, the main house, it's still attached to the septic system, the electricity.
Didn't you have to put your own, I mean, didn't it have to be independent as far as septic goes?
No, you just need to meet. You just need to meet Board of Health requirements for the sizing of a septic. So, let's say a 4-bedroom home and you're looking to add an accessory dwelling unit and you're not planning on taking away one of your bedrooms, right? So then you're gonna increase to a total of 5 bedrooms. You still have to comply with Board of Health requirements for a 5 bedroom septic
Could be an
design,
actual trench or
whatever that
something,
is. Yeah,
And there is a parking requirement, correct?
there is a parking requirement.
One space.
Mhm.
Any other comments on?
Can I just ask a question on the parking requirement? Tommy was referring to these like really tight lots, especially closer to downtown. When it talks about parking, is that off-street parking?
Off-street parking, yes.
Okay, so it's not on-street parking. So the person who proposes one of these will have to put parking spaces for their own cars
Private parking.
Yeah.
So through the chair, the parking requirement is that there should be 2 off-street parking spaces for the principal dwelling unit and at least 1 off-street parking for the accessory unit. And that no parking shall be located within the boundary of a street right of way. So it needs to be in public, private property. In no case shall parking spaces which are more than 2 spaces deep be considered in computing the required number of parking. So what that means is that you can stack them at least 2 deep, but not 3 deep, right? So that you have like you're running a car lot and you're just stacking inventory, right? So it allows you to stack the vehicles, which I think is actually smart that the state called that out.
And are they expecting litigation on this like there were for the MBTA communities?
Well, I'm sure they're expecting it, but I'm not aware of any challenges currently.
Any noise? Okay.
I don't know who'd be on the other side of this.
I imagine it'll come down to, and come February, if there's what'll happen is that you'll have a town that is not issuing building permits for something like this. And then whoever is seeking the building permit will appeal the building commissioner's decision to not issue them a permit. That'll go to the ZBA.
That's the most likely litigation is not from the town putting it in, but from the actual construction of something
Yeah.
that people don't like.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Now, I still, just to vent for a second, this isn't substantive, but I still find it frustrating because the town of Upton was, we were already working on accessory dwelling unit bylaw. And then, and it had, we were debating about certain provisions. But then the state comes in and tells us what we have to do. And there's something, so to channel Mr. Davidson, there's something in my soul that just has a hard time with that. Because they're taking all the zoning decisions away from us, and I just think that's wrong.
Okay, well, thank you for that conservative viewpoint, Cal.
Yeah, I live too close to you, Tom. It's got to be the air.
What else? Anything else on this one? Any other questions? Because we're gonna make a recommendation, is that correct? We have to make a recommendation.
Yep, ask for a motion from the board to make a recommendation to the town meeting as to how you would like to proceed with this.
If we should close the public hearing first and then make the recommendation. I think that's what we're supposed to do.
That makes sense.
Are there any questions before we close the public hearing? Public hearing closed at 7:38?
28.
28,
Mhm.
and the regularly scheduled meeting is resumed. Is there a motion to recommend to the town acceptance of 300.7.6-7?
Motion to recommend.
I'll second it for discussion. Any discussion? Kathy, any discussion on the motion?
Nope.
Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, Kathy first.
I accept.
Signify by saying aye. And
I,
all
Aye.
in favor? It's unanimous, 4-0. We did the subdivision already, request bond reduction, that's done.
but Tommy,
And
did you put the deep size into, Ken, did you put the deep size protest into the minutes?
I did
Yeah.
not, but I can add that.
Right, pregnant pause.
should be a ... in there somewhere. Town meeting presentation.
I was just wanted to bring this up briefly. Obviously, I'll put together a couple slides for the presentation on for town meeting floor. I was planning on speaking to all of them, but if anybody wants to jump in and do any of that, let me know. Otherwise, I'm planning on doing it for the board. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was just with the MBTA, because there are going to be 2 articles on that. There's the main article, and then there's like the smaller subset offshoot article that we had deferred to. We had called out a small section of that to allow for a separate vote on that. And what I was going to suggest to this board is that just take a look at that article. I think I might have mentioned it to a couple of you already that when I was reading through it again, I just kind of got the feeling that much like we were discussing, or this board was discussing at the public hearing, was the language of that smaller article just seemed to be add a lot more confusion than it is worth. And really the meat of that entire zone change is in the first one, the one that's going to require the majority, simple majority vote anyway. So just for the board, if you want to consider it when we come back and talk about it at the next meeting, whether or not you want to try and pass that over or not. Just take a look at the article again and see if it's even worth putting forward to the town. And for just a little recap on that, I mean, you have, I'm not gonna go through the entirety of the MBTA, the zoning district, but the small part of it that we were holding off was, it was specific towards allowing for specially permitted business uses to be allowed by special permit in that new zone. And that was the thing that was just creating a conflict with, does it require a 2/3 or a simple majority? And it's basically just the fact that a special permit is mentioned is the reason why it's triggering a
But a
2/3.
zoning change requires 2/3, and that could be considered.
That does,
Yeah.
that will, but the MBTA, as it's been written, will not, because that's what the new law did.
So that's a simple majority.
Yes, because it's multifamily.
Yeah, I mean, my sense is that I never quite understood why we were putting in the one that would allow business by special permit. But that's something we can change at a later date too, if we want to do that, correct?
Do you mean like after, like for another town meeting?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, I would prefer to strike it because I agree with you, and I think there's going to be some issues raised anyway. And so I'd prefer to keep it as simple as possible.
One thing I did mention is to Kathy that I've asked everybody to think about, we're gonna set aside, we have to set aside 10 acres to put up 150 units max. It may be 75 or 100, but we got a plan for 150. Shouldn't we, this isn't Brookline, shouldn't we zone 20 or 30 acres, allow them to only put up, build the 10, but they gotta have trees around. You know, you gotta have some type of a Upton-like feel.
Yeah.
Even though you put in all these units, we can say, yes, we're gonna meet your state requirements that 10 acres can be built at that density. But you're gonna have at least 20
Well,
to
when
put the
we're,
10.
when we're approving the plans, can we require that at the
I
time?
don't know if we can.
Probably not, but
There's wetland somewhere in there
Yeah.
too, right?
But so the issue, Tom, is that, and I totally, what you're saying makes perfect, reasonable, logical sense. Unfortunately, we're dealing with the state and laws, which hardly ever make reasonable, logical sense. And I can personally attest to the lack of, anyway.
Show business for the ugly.
So, I mean, it's just, what'll end up happening is that if were we to have created a district like that with those requirements, it would never have fit into the compliance model, which was this extraordinary Excel spreadsheet that the state had us fill out.
So if we designated 10 acres as per their thing, it's okay, but if we designated 20 and you can build 10 on it, it isn't?
Correct.
That's ridiculous.
Agreed.
So basically, and I'm not arguing for this because I don't like this idea at all, but there's a parcel of land at the end of Mechanic Street. It's like 28 acres. So we couldn't, and that was one of the ones that was raised during the workshop we had. So it wouldn't be possible to designate that, but only restrict development on 10 acres.
You would have, yes, correct. You wouldn't have been able to have zoned that entire parcel to be within the district, but then restricted the developable portion of the district to only 10 acres. That wouldn't have passed the compliance model. That would have driven the density down below 15 acres, 15 units per acre, which was the requirement. You know, and then I also think,
For example, if I may interrupt here, you've got a parcel of 10 acres, right? You can't have a town-owned land around that parcel of trees that you have your 10 acres, but around it is unbuildable because it's,
you could, so you could have, if a parcel existed that you had 10 acres that are basically like an island of it, right? And then around those 10 acres, but not on the same deeded property, is protected open space.
we'd only have zoned that 10 acres. That would be the only zoning change. The other would be in a different zone, but they'd have a protective status on it.
That would have, if that scenario existed, that would have.
Doesn't that make more sense just because if they're in Upton, don't they want to, they don't want to be just,
Well, Tom, in the one that was, the planning board recommended, it is 14 acres, but 4 acres of it are unbuildable. They're wetlands. So it does, it is bigger, and 4 acres, and I know that, that's still, I think the 10 acres, is still pretty visible, but then Governor's Landing is going to be pretty visible.
Yes.
So if we do that, but it's still, so yeah, I mean, you could get a place like, portion of that and, zone that. There are different options for overlays, but, the thing is that we're sort of running out of time, and we did have the planning workshop and we looked at different options, and, we're sort of under the gun to get something passed, and doing the transfers necessarily for Pleasant Woods wouldn't, it wouldn't, it just wouldn't happen enough, quickly enough. So I think that's the big thing that we're facing, is that we're under the gun to have something finalized and in place and done by the end of 2025.
that's what we make mistakes when we rush.
I know, but the state basically says rush, or we're going to sue you like we're doing to Milton.
I think about through the chair, I do think the district that you've selected makes good sense. It's a very defensible district.
Is that Governor's Landing?
Yeah. For a lot of the reasons Kathy just was touching on.
I've heard 2 different versions. One is it's going to crowd downtown, and one is that that's the easiest place to be serviced by the town, for them. Then the other one is if you put it on East Street, that's where they're going, right? They're in that direction, but maybe that's not where they're going. Maybe they're headed the other direction or something.
Really no way to predict where.
How do you know which direction they're gonna go
They
in?
may not be going to the train. They may be taking advantage of the housing, but they might not be heading to Graff. Might be
We may not
somewhere
doing anybody in a favor in East Street if they're working in Worcester or on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean,
Many favors.
we know statistically that folks, it's only 10% or under of working residents in Upton are taking mass transit. So we know that, assuming that's a relatively static number, say you have 200 people move into town, you're not gonna have more than 20 people that are traveling to any of the train stations. But also, such as was the issue with the proposed 40B on Mechanic Street, is my understanding. Obviously, I wasn't here. People were no fan of that proposal, right? Mechanic Street being the type of street that it is, and being able to be serviced and traveled. I would fear that proposing were this board to have to go back to the drawing board, where you propose a district in an area of town that is a lot more secluded or wooded or not as accessible. I think you'd actually run into potential a lot more pushback from the residents and town residents in those areas than on Route 140, where you have really an expectation for there to be development.
One of the reasons that Governor's Landing is a better spot is because you don't have to think of some other way to put this in a residential
Yes.
agricultural zone and have it look normal.
Exactly.
It doesn't look normal anywhere except
Yeah.
on Main Street.
Right.
Just,
You know, and people, the complaint that came up at the last meeting that we had at the public hearing was increased traffic on 140. But 140, unfortunately, is the main drag through town. That's where the traffic is supposed to be. And, you know, we complain about, I know I get stuck like at most, you know, 2 or 3 times during rush hour at that light on near Hopkinton Road. And that is like horrible. When I lived in Worcester, you'd get stuck like 6 times at Chandler Street. I mean, you know, we ain't seen nothing. And the amount of traffic that this is going to add, I don't think, you know, it's a main street. It's not a windy back road. It's not, it's, you know, and the people, if we put it on the outside, you know, towards East Street, those people are going to be going down those back roads to get to Upton Center, to go to the post office, to, you know, go to the community center, you know, so it's, I think keeping that on 140 is advisable. And I think that's what the primary objection is. There were people that lived downtown that were very concerned about increased traffic on 140. But if traffic's not on the main street, then where's it going to be? I mean, that's the purpose of the main street. Sorry.
I think where we're gonna have
Tonight.
trouble is Elm Street. Because people are gonna avoid the light over at Pratt Pond
Yeah.
and cut down Elm from that area if they're heading out of town. That's where, because then you're getting into small roads and that whole group,
Yeah.
that's where we're gonna hear the problems.
Like the
'Cause
traffic,
those roads get
like, you know, blew up when they put that light down there. You know, it just is a hell of a lot more going down Mechanic Street because people just don't want to go through that light. So they're just doing a cut through down Mechanic and then on to 140. So
But there's nowhere we can put it in town that's not gonna affect us in some way.
I know. That's the thing. You can't do something of this magnitude.
and, you know, the 2 viewpoints are you gonna help? This is designed to help these people move in. This is low income. This is for middle income and up to live in. That's the intention of this.
It's not, you know,
So
it's just people.
our choice is, so what's the best way to help the town help them? It probably isn't put them on the outskirts of town because we don't know where they go.
Mhm.
We don't have any, they're all, 75% of them are going to Boston.
Yeah.
We don't know that.
Mhm.
So we can't put them on the outskirts and expect the fire and police and emergency and everybody, the bus service, everybody to be happy with that. All of that traffic from outskirts going through town to get to the other side. But if you're worried about Elm Street, wherever we put it and they're going to the other side of town, you're gonna have every. So it makes sense. Is Governor's Landing the best place? Closest,
It's an
It's already been developed.
underdeveloped major road.
it's already had,
That's all we got.
but that plan has already had its engineering done, its drainage done, its traffic. We did a traffic study on that. We did everything on that project. We did the historical
Mhm.
site
That's right.
on that.
Mhm.
All the neighbors chance to weigh in on the application.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's already had some measure of scrutiny.
So that's, I think, why the planning board recommended it. But I still think there's going to be pushback at town meeting.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about it. They think it's gonna cause too much traffic downtown but if there's 1,500 cars an hour that go from 6:30 to 8:30,
Mhm.
I believe I think it was 1,500, maybe a little better per hour. This isn't gonna change
Nope.
that amount.
Nope.
Let's say there's 100 or 50 or 75, whatever that may be, that's This doesn't change it from I think it's a secondary road. I think it's called a secondary.
Uh,
140, I don't think it's minor. I think it's secondary, is it?
yeah, at least it's a major artery.
Well, I don't think it's called a major road. I think that's a width difference. I forget, but this wouldn't make it to the next level, the next step of a roadway. Secondary, minor, major. I don't think it's 300 cars.
And it's gonna have water and sewer too. It's gonna have the infrastructure going up there, whereas, very few other sites in Upton will do that.
And well, the reason I say that is if you put this on in the outskirts, some of those roads would have to be improved.
Yeah.
There's roads that are not suitable for another 300 cars.
Well,
So-
according to Dennis, there's some roads in Upton, like Mechanic Street, for example, you can't because it was built sort of on rock. And so it's not like you can really widen it. It's not like you can make it like deeper so the pavement lasts. I mean, the issues are what type of improvements can be done on these side roads.
Well, that's another for putting it downtown is the road improvements to get
Yeah.
down from there to wherever they're going.
They're all paid for the state.
Anything else on that one?
No, but I do have a question on the other one. Do we know if there's, with the 5G bylaw, are you going to present on it on behalf of, the other folks, or are they going to be presenting as well?
I have not touched base with them on that. I was going to reach out and suggest that I give a very brief presentation on it,
Yeah, okay,
if that's okay.
Yeah, I'd love it if you did.
It's best.
I figured that was. Okay.
And if they get to the point where they start asking the planning board a bunch of questions, the motion's probably lost at that point.
Hmm.
At this point, if somebody has to stand up and lean against the stage and talk for 20 minutes, it's not going to get approved.
No, that's one of my concerns. I think if Mike does a quick,
Have anybody in mind?
I'm hypothetically.
What else we got? Anything else, all right? Meeting adjourned at 7:40 something.